hopefully, welcome back to some viewers and readers. This is my third video as Honestdadvice, attempting to consider big ideas and grapple with the intersection point between science and philosophy and theology, where I have, I hope, continuously demonstrated that I am committed to being clear and upfront in all my communications, as I truly believe in the importance of personal integrity of word and action. My goals include the inspiration of open-minded inquiry, leading to both learning and growth, in myself and in others who might view these videos. I reiterate my sincere belief that speaking the truth has power and significance whenever it is accomplished. One of my primary goals is to be both heard and acknowledged by others positively, through mutually respectful engagements in comments and replies via my social media avenues, including these videos and my Facebook business page, Ehrlich Educational. My first video was launched at the end of Jan 2021, and I intend to produce and release at least one video a week initially. I want people to be free to believe and state their beliefs, but tolerant enough and open-minded enough to consider their underlying assumptions and entertain the possibility of alternative views, both in terms of viewing my video content and having space and time to reflect upon the matters considered at a reasonable pace. The topic of this third video will be questions of ultimate destiny. As should be obvious by now to anyone following my endeavours, I am highly interested in science, philosophy and theology, the systematic inquiry of matters of existence, reality and thought, as well as the natures of deities and the destiny of humans after this life. I know this topic inherently fascinates me, and I sincerely hope to be of interest to others who might view this video. Speaking for myself, I am intrigued fundamentally by what I perceive as inevitable future death and decay and the destruction of my physical form. In addition, my religious tradition of Roman Catholicism has a well-developed framework for exploring the possibility of various forms and aspects of a life after the conclusion of this earthbound existence, which I wish to elucidate for the novice, as well as those, perhaps of a more rigorous intellectual tradition, who are curious enough to begin or continue a personal investigation of their own views in this subject. In my individual experience, there has been only a relatively small exposure to the realities of death and the end of familial relationships. Both of my grandfathers were deceased long before I was conceived and born to my parents, while I had some time to get to know both my grandmothers during childhood and adolescence. However, they too have now passed away. I will actively try to avoid any more euphemistic terminology and to be as clear as possible in this video. My maternal and paternal grandmothers are deceased. I am fortunate that I married into a family in which all grandparents of my wife remain alive, and I can interact with them and develop and enjoy further familial relationships. But there is a reasonable expectation amongst those of us who discuss such things at times that one day they too will be gone. What does the end of life mean? To me at least, this question has multiple levels of reality. Indisputably, death is definable as a point where there is an embodied being's cessation of life-supporting function. Secondarily, decay and breakdown of the physical form occur. And then there are various mechanisms for the recycling of physical matter that was once an individual human into organic and inorganic matter in the biosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere of the planet Earth. Separately, there is the end of relationships of mutual exchange of thoughts and ideas, verbally and in written language. Communication, as for example, letters of will and farewell, are an ending. And at least for me personally, there is no expectation of communication continuing beyond death in this life. Finally, there is the hope of a reunion and some level of experience in a future reality, an existence that does not yet make itself known and understood while we are alive in a regular, repetitive, or routine manner. There are also myriad claims of out-of-the-ordinary experiences, which are admittedly possible, but it's also possible that these experiences of otherworldly or supernatural intervention in life are a form of individual or collective delusion. I can only say that in my own personal, first-hand experience, nothing otherworldly or supernatural has occurred. It is also true, however, that I am inherently skeptical and have not actively sought out or tried to believe in ghosts, spirits interacting with the physical reality from beyond death, Ouija, or other occult paraphernalia. I have attempted already in written comments on my Facebook page to grapple with my next point, and I encourage viewers to see the thread of reasoning originally addressed to account holder Sean Kennan. I thank them once more, and again recount here in the form of a very slightly edited conversation, only for minor grammatical errors and the flow of dialogue from the discussion we have had. Sean Kennan. Which God should I worship? The Greek God, the Islamic God, the Hindu God, the God of the Chinese religion? Ehrlich Educational. Firstly, I would say no to all of the proposed options. I believe that you, myself, and all humans, with no exceptions, should worship the God of the Hebrew Scriptures, originally worshipped as Elohim, and the Tetragrammaton, which is YHWH. And we honestly do not know the vowels that go in with those consonants in Hebrew, but it's often pronounced Yahweh. I argue that there is logically one original and ultimate version of truth regarding existence, either the universe which we observe having a distinct progression from a single origin point is original and has no precursor, or it is not original and either has previous versions and iterations, or is not unique and is part of a multiverse. Furthermore, the universe either has no original creator or it does. In addition to this, the universe's creator, if there is one, is far beyond our understanding and possibility of comprehension, as we are fundamentally limited by our existence within the universe and cannot observe any realities which exist outside the known universe which is observable. All else is speculative. It is possible, though a matter of debate, that the version of reality claimed by Hebrew culture, which evolved into, amongst others including Islam and contemporary versions of Judaism, the Christian worldview of the present era, the one to which I belong, is correct. I encourage you to investigate the heritage you have. Sean is spelt in the traditionally Irish manner here, so perhaps you are interested in Druidism or naturalism or some version of animism, and that you reject Catholicism or Protestantism, considering what has happened in Ireland in the past 100 years. Who can blame you if so? My own paternal Jewish heritage, Ehrlich is Ashkenazi Jewish, and it means honesty or trustworthy, is of interest to me, and I have Anglo-Celtic heritage on my maternal side, who were Anglicans and then Catholic converts. I advise you to know who you descend from. Perhaps you also have Greek, Islamic, Indian, or Chinese heritage, which of course relates to your original post. But I think that is a question for you, not for me to answer. Sean Kennan. Thank you. My question most importantly is what will happen to me if I refuse to follow the God you suggest? Ehrlich Educational. Sean Kennan, it is a good question. I have a gut feeling myself that there must be consequences for evil and for moral infractions. However, I hope that there is a way out from either, on the one hand, nihilism and existential dread, or, on the other, irresponsibility, as everything can be forgiven too easily with no effort on the part of one another. So, the version of Catholic Christianity I espouse, where personal cooperation in faith, shown through charitable activity and the admission of guilt, humbling oneself and working to join God via grace, is part of the salvation as offered by Jesus through his merciful taking of our individual places in judgment as deserving of death for personally responsible evil-doing, as a good middle road. To clarify, Jesus is on the record as stating in multiple ways that few would make it to heaven. Jesus said that God is a just judge, and we must be awake, ready, and alert for ourselves to be welcome to join in with God positively at the end of time and this existence. It is up to you to choose if you believe this version of the faith narrative, or prefer, for example, the Buddhist view of eternal rebirth until nirvana is achieved, or the many other versions of belief in an afterlife. Sean Cannon: I know all that, but you have not answered my question. What will happen to me or anyone who rejects the God you suggest we worship? What if I choose not to accept or honour this God? This is a serious question. I need to know the answer. Ehrlich Educational. In attempting to address that query, firstly, I do not claim that I know with total certainty what will happen to you or anyone else in the afterlife, if there is one. Whether one is doomed to an afterlife of suffering torment, if unwelcome to enter, or if actively rejected from heaven, or perhaps if it is more like that you are there, but your personal experience of it is torturous or blissful. I think fire is metaphorical in interpreting hell. I also think that there may be some middle way of getting better through collective effort of the faithful. Committed and prayerful Catholics like myself pray for the souls of the deceased regularly at Mass, via the concept called purgatory. It is, in my opinion, very unlikely that many enter heaven immediately upon the first death they experience. Initially, Catholic theology terms such souls that enter heaven immediately upon death as saints, and an unspecified number is believed to exist in heaven currently in a spiritual form. Catholic theology talks of a spirit being dead and, if you like, provisionally judged as worthy or unworthy of heaven. If unworthy, then it is off to hell if unrepentant, or purgatory if there is part of oneself that is repentant, while another part desires to remain the same. I personally interpret this bit as being about addictions to the pleasurable aspects of sinful activities, such as addiction to sex or drugs bringing pleasure but with harmful side effects. Practicing and believing Catholics are obliged to deny the reality of reincarnation or a cycle of multiple lives, as in there is one shot per soul, and that ultimately there is going to be a final judgment where bodily resurrection of all humans occurs and a secondary final reckoning occurs. At this point, purgatory is out, and it's either goat or sheep time for all. Goats are the metaphorical Bible term for those who are deemed unworthy of Jesus' salvation by God's complete knowledge of us totally. I do not know what happens then, but my thinking falls into two categories. Option A, eternal suffering of torturous pain, while in full ongoing awareness of this, and it being impossible to end or leave it. Or option B, dissipation from awareness, consciousness, into nothingness or non-being. You, me, and everyone else want to be a sheep at that point. Assuming the Christian story is true and correct, it has always been binary in its claims regarding the fate of humanity, as it does not make sense for us to be saved by a merciful, loving God unless we risk something truly terrible if we are not saved. The heaven of the end is often described as a new heaven and a new earth where there is no death. I do not know what it is, but to say we are in something called the beatific vision, where we will see God and know God face to face, as he does the same to us all individually at once. I liken it to being naked and stared at by the ultimate, closest lover possible, whilst being totally vulnerable and having to completely trust in God like a lover does. Sean Kennan. Sounds good. If it is not certain, as you say, that if I reject God, I will go to hell, that sounds good to me. Thank you. Ehrlich Educational. Sean Kennan. You have either freedom or at the very least the illusion and the current appearance of freedom in this life. Who can say what the consequences will be in advance? Rather, you, I, and everyone else are encouraged to live a good, virtuous life and do what you believe is right from moment to moment, with self-reflection over time. I believe that you have the same opportunity as any believer of attaining salvation, but that might look different to different observers. I appreciate the respectful engagement with the page. Kind regards. In discussing the preceding conversation, some further points of clarification I did not originally say to Sean are warranted. Firstly, I want to reaffirm that any discussion from my pages will, from my end, be conducted with intellectual rigour, and I encourage any criticism to be done fairly in a spirit of mutual inquiry. I also recognise that whilst as an educator I can offer much wisdom and content for consideration, it is the free choice of others to submit themselves humbly to inquiry or not. I do not have expectations of Sean or others that they will convert to Roman Catholicism on the strength of my own limited endeavours alone. Rather, I hope to encourage an attitude of learning over the lifetime, which for many humans is measured in decades, with ample time to grapple with the existential questions of the meaning and purpose of life and awareness. My secondary point is to reiterate that I do not hold the answers to questions of ultimate importance. If you seek certainty, you will need to look elsewhere. You will get from me clear and upfront admittance that my views are my own, my opinions and beliefs are being freely shared, but I do not have certainty in these views. I do not claim that the evidence for my views is perfect, and I am not unyielding or dogmatic. Some, in unkind and critical comments on my business advertisements for the videos released thus far, have unfairly labelled me as a fundy, short for fundamentalist Christian. That is, someone who is closed-minded and dogmatically asserts sola scriptura as well as creationism in an uncritical manner, or have dismissed me as foolish and not worth listening to. I have said before in direct reply, and reiterate here, that this is their own free choice, and reflects more upon their presuppositions and what I interpret as a lack of open-mindedness than anything else. I am not in the business of shutting down dialogue prematurely, but over time you will see that I eventually cut off or shut down from engaging with particularly egregious cases of intellectual ignorance and willful refusal to be civil in discourse. If you notice that your voice is being ignored, consider what, if anything, you have power over to make a change in the tone of the conversation. With all that said, my final point for this video is a bit of a hypothetical thought experiment. Imagine that you are in heaven with God, and so is everyone else who ever existed for all time, permanently. You know everything about everyone else's life, down to the minutest details of their internal dialogue and inner thoughts on all things they experience from moment to moment, as you are aware they do of you too. This is a very, very, very big network of input-output of information, far more than any human can currently contain and process. You are also aware of God and God's thoughts and feeling about you, which we consider to be God's final judgment. Are you comfortable in this situation or not? I think the same experience might be perceived very differently, distinct as either pleasure or pain, depending on one's internal disposition and preceding behaviour. After all, even if you were not actually immediately aware of everything everyone ever did, eventually, if eternity is unending, you would have enough opportunity to become aware of all that ever occurred or was perceived by all people, and they would be able to do this too with regard to you. No secrets and total transparency. This is to me both a very daunting and confronting possibility, and is about the closest thing to a stable view of the afterlife that I feel comfortable claiming as my own belief about this yet ultimate mystery experience. As I have stated in concluding prior videos, this is still the first phase of an ongoing endeavour to produce a series of explorations on what I see as topical issues. As I have said repeatedly, I remain open to generating lively discussion in the hope of real dialogue, where exchange of views is done respectfully in the pursuit of mutual growth and development on all sides, readers and listeners, as well as writers and speakers alike. If you have persevered thus far, thank you very much. I hope that it has been an engaging experience, and that if you are curious, you might reach out via leaving a comment below. For now, again, thank you for your interest. If you want to see more content like this in future, please subscribe to my channel for more to come. Thank you.